In the vast tapestry of the cosmos, where civilizations rise and fall like waves upon an endless shore, there existed one absolute truth that every species learned, respected, and feared. It wasn't written in ancient texts or carved into monuments of dead empires. It wasn't taught in academies or whispered in religious ceremonies. It was simply understood, passed down through genetic memory, cultural instinct, and the primal wisdom that keeps prey animals alive when predators prowl. The rule was simple: never wake the sleeping giant. For 10,000 years, the galaxy had thrived in peaceful prosperity. Trade routes flourished between star systems, diplomatic councils resolved conflicts with words rather than weapons, and the great wars of the past became nothing more than cautionary tales told to younglings. The Zephyrians built their crystal cities in harmony with nature. The Krillians perfected their art of dimensional mathematics. The Vorthak achieved spiritual enlightenment through collective consciousness. Every civilization had found their purpose, their calling, their place in the cosmic order. But there was one corner of the galaxy that remained untouched, unvisited, and unspoken of in polite society. A small, unremarkable spiral arm containing a modest yellow star and its collection of planetary bodies. The third rock from that star harbored something that made even the most powerful species in the galaxy lower their voices to respectful whispers. Humans. The sleeping giants who had once carved their names across the stars with fire and fury, who had fought wars so terrible that reality itself bore scars, who had loved so fiercely and raged so completely that their very emotions became weapons of mass destruction. They had chosen sleep over conquest, peace over glory, and, in doing so, had become the galaxy's most benevolent protectors simply by remaining dormant. But rules, even cosmic ones, are made to be broken. And, somewhere in the distant reaches of space, in a boardroom filled with beings who had never learned the meaning of the word enough, a decision was about to be made that would shatter 10 millennia of peace. The universe was about to remember why humans were never meant to be disturbed. And, this time, there would be no going back to sleep. The boardroom of the Galactic Mining Consortium stretched across an entire floor of the Nexus Prime space station, its walls made of transparent aluminum offering a breathtaking view of the swirling nebula beyond. Around the crescent-shaped table sat representatives of 12 major civilizations, their various forms and features creating a bizarre parliament of alien ambition. Chairman Veltar of the Zephyrian Mining Guild tapped his crystalline fingers against the polished surface, the sound echoing like wind chimes in the recycled atmosphere. His translucent blue skin shimmered with barely contained excitement as he gestured toward the holographic display floating above the table's center. Gentle beings, what you see before you represents the greatest untapped resource opportunity in galactic history, Veltar announced, his voice carrying the melodic quality typical of his species. Sector 7 Alpha contains mineral deposits that would revolutionize our energy infrastructure. Rare earth elements that exist nowhere else in known space. Crystallized quantum matter that could power our civilizations for the next million years. A hologram rotated slowly, showing detailed scans of a small solar system. The third planet from its yellow star glowed with an almost hypnotic blue-green light, its surface streaked with white clouds and brown continents. To most observers, it appeared unremarkable, even primitive by galactic standards. General Krex of the Dominion Defense Force, his reptilian features scarred by countless battles, leaned forward with interest. His scaled hands gripped the edge of the table as his yellow eyes studied the data streams flowing beside the planetary image. The preliminary surveys show massive deposits of unobtainium and gravitational crystals in the planet's core. But there's something else. The energy readings are unusual. Dr. Mirren Court-Hess, the Vorthak Collective Consciousness representative, spoke through her mechanical translation unit, her multiple voices harmonizing into a single coherent thought. The anomalous readings suggest advanced technology, possibly dormant. Our psychic scans detected vast networks of quantum entanglement patterns across the planet's surface. Whatever civilization once existed there achieved remarkable technological integration. Once existed being the operative phrase, interrupted Trade Minister Coxheim of the Hegemony Commercial Authority, his forearms gesticulating wildly as he spoke. The planet shows clear signs of historical warfare, but current population scans indicate minimal technological activity. Primitive electromagnetic communications, chemical-based transportation, nuclear fission power sources. They've clearly regressed from whatever heights they once achieved. Chairman Veltar nodded enthusiastically. Exactly our assessment. The current inhabitants appear to be descendants of a once great civilization that has fallen into technological dark age. They pose no threat to our operations and could even benefit from our guidance and advanced infrastructure. The hologram shifted to show close-up images of the planet's surface. Cities sprawled across continents, connected by networks of transportation arteries. Lights twinkled in the darkness of the night side, creating beautiful patterns that resembled neural networks. Agricultural zones created geometric patches of green and gold across vast landmasses. The planet they call Earth appears to be recovering from some ancient catastrophe, continued Dr. Cortez. Our xenoarchaeologists have identified massive crater formations consistent with large-scale kinetic bombardment. Geological layers show evidence of nuclear winters, mass extinction events, and rapid climate shifts. Yet somehow, life persisted and even thrived. Commander Thekran of the Star League military forces, his insectoid features twitching with barely concealed aggression, clicked his mandibles together. The inhabitants call themselves humans. Our intelligence suggests they're a naturally violent species with a complex history of internal warfare. However, their current military capabilities are laughably primitive. Solid fuel rockets, chemical explosives, electromagnetic projectile weapons. They couldn't threaten a single Corvette-class mining vessel. The room filled with various forms of alien laughter, from the musical trilling of the Zephyrians to the deep rumbling of the Krillian delegates. Only one being remained silent throughout the presentation, Elder Mordun of the Archive Keepers, an ancient species whose purpose was to preserve galactic history and knowledge. Veltar gestured toward a new series of holographic charts showing projected mining yields, profit margins, and extraction timelines. Our proposal is simple. We establish mining operations in the uninhabited regions of the planet's crust. The humans will barely notice our presence. We extract the resources we need over a period of several decades, provide some basic technological upgrades to the local population as compensation, and everyone benefits. The profit projections are staggering, added Minister Coxheim, his compound eyes gleaming with avarice. This single operation could fund our expansion into 3 new galaxy clusters. The quantum crystals alone would revolutionize our faster-than-light communication networks. General Krex stood and walked to the holographic display, his clawed hands passing through the image of Earth. The strategic value cannot be overstated. A planet rich in both energy resources and rare materials, populated by a primitive species that poses no military threat. It's the perfect opportunity for peaceful resource extraction with minimal risk. There are some unusual readings we haven't fully explained, Dr. Cortez interjected, her harmonized voices carrying a note of caution. Deep space monitoring stations have detected periodic energy bursts from the system that don't correspond to any known natural phenomena. Additionally, there are structures on the planet's surface that appear far more advanced than the general technological level would suggest. Commander Thekran waved dismissively. Probably remnants of their ancient civilization. Archaeological curiosities with no military significance. Our tactical analysis shows they lack even basic planetary defense systems. No orbital platforms, no energy shields, no directed energy weapons. They're completely vulnerable to any serious military action. The discussion continued for hours, with various delegates presenting supporting data, cost-benefit analyses, and logistics plans. Maps showed proposed mining sites in remote locations. Environmental impact studies demonstrated minimal disruption to the local ecosystem. Cultural anthropologists presented reports on human behavior patterns and suggested the most effective approaches for establishing peaceful contact. Throughout the entire presentation, Elder Mordun sat in absolute silence, his ancient features betraying no emotion. His species had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations across millions of years, and their archives contained knowledge that most of the galaxy had forgotten. When the formal presentation finally concluded, all eyes turned to him expectantly. Elder Mordun, Chairman Veltar said respectfully, "The archive keepers have remained silent throughout our discussion. We would value your wisdom regarding this proposal." The ancient being slowly raised his head, his deep-set eyes seeming to look through the assembled delegates rather than at them. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of eons, each word carefully chosen and heavy with meaning. "The archives contain many warnings," he said quietly. "Ancient texts speak of species that should not be disturbed. Your proposal concerns a system that our predecessors marked with the highest level of caution codes." General Krex laughed, his reptilian features twisting into what passed for a smile among his kind. "Respectfully, Elder, those warnings are thousands of years old. Whatever threats once existed have clearly diminished. The humans are demonstrably primitive and peaceful." "Peaceful," Elder Mordun repeated, as if testing the word. "Yes, they appear peaceful now. But the archives speak of a time when they were not. When they carved paths of fire across the stars and fought wars that scarred reality itself." Minister Coxheim's forearms crossed skeptically. "If such capabilities ever existed, they've clearly been lost. Perhaps your archives contain exaggerated legends rather than historical facts." The Elder's ancient eyes fixed on the holographic image of Earth, still rotating slowly in the center of the table. "The archives do not deal in legends, Minister. They record only verified historical events. And they record that 10,000 years ago, the humans agreed to a compact. They would sleep, and the galaxy would prosper in peace." "A compact?" Dr. Cortez inquired, her collective consciousness suddenly focused with laser intensity. "The Vorthak memory banks contain no record of such an agreement. Because it was made with forces beyond your understanding," Elder Mordun replied. "Not with governments or species, but with concepts themselves. With peace, with restraint, with the very fabric of cosmic order. The humans chose to limit themselves, to step back from the brink of absolute power, in exchange for the galaxy's promise to leave them in peace." Commander Thekran's mandibles clicked with irritation. "You're speaking in mystical riddles, Elder. If such power existed, why would they abandon it? What rational species voluntarily retreats from dominance?" For the first time, Elder Mordun smiled, though the expression held no warmth. "A species that understands the true cost of power, Commander. A species that has looked into the abyss and chosen to step back rather than fall in." "The humans didn't retreat from dominance. They retreated from damnation." The room fell silent as the delegates absorbed these words. The holographic image of Earth continued its slow rotation, its blue oceans and green continents appearing deceptively peaceful and inviting. Chairman Veltar cleared his throat diplomatically. "While we appreciate the historical perspective, Elder, we must base our decisions on current realities rather than ancient warnings. The mineral wealth of this system could solve energy crises across dozens of civilizations. The humanitarian benefits alone justify careful exploration of this opportunity." "Careful exploration," the Elder repeated thoughtfully. "Tell me, Chairman, what does your definition of careful include? Landing parties? Orbital surveys? Mining operations?" "Standard first contact protocols," Veltar replied confidently. "Observational studies, cultural assessment, gradual introduction of our presence. We would approach the humans with friendship and mutual benefit in mind." Elder Mordun stood slowly, his ancient joints creaking audibly in the silence. He walked to the observation window and gazed out at the swirling nebula beyond, his reflection ghostlike in the transparent aluminum. "The last species to wake the humans no longer exists," he said quietly. "Not destroyed, not conquered, not even remembered. They simply ceased. Their worlds remain, their cities stand empty, their technologies function perfectly. But the people themselves vanished from reality as if they had never been born." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as this information sank in. Even the most aggressive delegates found themselves shifting uncomfortably in their seats. "How is such a thing possible?" General Krex asked, his earlier bravado notably absent. "Because," Elder Mordun replied, still gazing out at the stars, "there are some powers in this universe that make death seem merciful by comparison. The humans mastered such powers long ago, and, in their wisdom, chose to set them aside. But the capacity remains, sleeping in their genetic memory, waiting for the right trigger to awaken it." He turned back to face the assembled delegates, his ancient features grave with the weight of absolute certainty. You speak of mining their world as if they were just another primitive species. You fail to understand that you are contemplating the desecration of a sacred trust that has kept our galaxy in peace for 10 millennia. The voting was swift and decisive despite the elders' warnings. 12 civilizations saw only profit and opportunity. Only the archive keepers abstained, their representative walking slowly from the room without another word. As the meeting dissolved into excited planning and resource allocation, none of the delegates noticed the subtle changes beginning to occur throughout the galaxy. Deep space monitoring stations recorded impossible energy signatures. Ancient warning beacons that had been silent for 10,000 years began to emit low, mournful tones. And, on a small blue-green planet in an unremarkable star system, several billion humans continued their daily lives, unaware that their long sleep was about to be violently interrupted. The universe's most fundamental rule was about to be broken, and the consequences would reshape the very nature of reality itself. Dr. Sarah Chen had always been drawn to the night shift at the Arecibo Deep Space Monitoring Station. The facility hummed with quiet efficiency in the darkness, its massive radio telescope arrays sweeping the heavens like mechanical prayers offered to the cosmic void. At 3 a.m, when most of her colleagues were home sleeping, Sarah found peace in the rhythmic pulse of data streams and the soft glow of monitoring screens. She sipped her coffee, her 4th cup since midnight, and reviewed the evening's collection of cosmic background radiation measurements. The work was methodical, almost meditative, searching for patterns in the endless symphony of electromagnetic signals that bathed the Earth from every direction. Most of the time, she found exactly what she expected: the familiar signatures of pulsars, the predictable emissions from known quasars, and the occasional burst of activity from distant gamma-ray sources. Tonight was different. The first anomaly appeared at 0347 hours as a faint but persistent signal from the direction of the Vega system. Sarah frowned at her instruments, checking and rechecking the readings. The signature didn't match any known celestial phenomena. It was too structured to be natural, too organized to be random cosmic noise, yet unlike anything in their extensive database of artificial signals. Computer, run a full spectral analysis on signal designation Tango 7, she commanded, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The artificial intelligence that managed the station's operations processed her request within human speed. Analysis complete, the computer replied in its neutral tone. Signal shows characteristics consistent with directed energy transmission. Frequency modulation suggests intentional information encoding. Source appears to be approximately 25.3 light-years distant. Sarah's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. Directed energy transmission from Vega meant only one thing: intelligence. Alien intelligence. She set down her cup with trembling hands and activated the emergency protocols that would alert the International Committee for Extraterrestrial Contact. Before she could complete the transmission, her instruments detected a second signal. Then, a third. Within minutes, the entire monitoring array was registering structured electromagnetic emissions from dozens of star systems across the galaxy. The signals varied in strength and frequency, but they all shared the same artificial characteristics that marked them as products of technological civilization. "This is impossible," Sarah whispered, staring at the flood of data cascading across her screens. In a single night, humanity had gone from being alone in the universe to detecting evidence of widespread galactic civilization. The implications were staggering, overwhelming, and utterly terrifying. The signals were clearly communications of some kind, though the encoding methods were beyond human comprehension. Sarah's training in xenolinguistics allowed her to identify recurring patterns and mathematical constants that suggested advanced intelligence, but the actual content remained frustratingly opaque. What disturbed her most was the emotional undertone she detected in the signal variations, something that felt distinctly like urgency, even panic. As dawn approached, Sarah found herself part of an emergency conference call that included scientists, military officials, and government representatives from around the world. The conversation was conducted in hushed tones despite the secure nature of the communication channels, as if speaking too loudly might somehow alert the sources of the mysterious transmissions to humanity's newfound awareness. "The signals are definitely artificial," confirmed Dr. Yuki Tanaka from the Japanese Deep Space Observatory. Our analysis indicates multiple distinct civilizations using different communication protocols. The sheer volume of traffic suggests a galaxy-wide network of unprecedented sophistication. General Morrison of the United States Space Command leaned forward into his video pickup, his weathered features grim with military concern. Are we looking at potential invasion forces? Could these be preparations for hostile action against Earth? Dr. Singh from the European Space Agency's Xenobiology Division shook her head. The communication patterns don't suggest military coordination. If anything, they appear to be emergency broadcasts. Our linguistic analysis software has identified several mathematical sequences that correspond to universal constants, possibly attempts at establishing common communication protocols. Sarah cleared her throat nervously before speaking. There's something else. The signals aren't just coming from nearby systems. We're detecting transmissions from sources thousands of light-years away, all arriving simultaneously. That's not possible unless they're using some form of faster-than-light communication technology that we don't understand. The silence that followed this revelation was profound and unsettling. The implications of instantaneous galactic communication suggested levels of technological advancement that made humanity's achievements seem like the fumbling attempts of primitive children. Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, director of the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute, spoke carefully into the growing quiet. If we're truly detecting evidence of advanced galactic civilization, we need to consider why we're only now becoming aware of it. Why haven't we detected these signals before? What changed? The question hung in the air like an ominous cloud, spawning theories and speculations that grew more disturbing with each passing hour. Some scientists suggested that the aliens had only recently developed their communication networks. Others proposed that Earth had been deliberately shielded from galactic transmissions until some unknown threshold was crossed. The most unsettling possibility was that humanity had somehow triggered this flood of communications through its own actions. Meanwhile, in orbit around Mars, the first mining survey vessel of the Galactic Mining Consortium began its final approach to the Sol system. The ship was massive by human standards, stretching over 2 kilometers in length and bristling with scanning arrays, extraction equipment, and defensive systems. To its alien crew, however, it was merely a standard exploration vessel, unremarkable and utilitarian in design. Captain Zexar of the Zephyrian Exploration Corps studied the tactical displays showing the inner solar system with professional interest. The third planet, their primary target, hung like a blue jewel against the black of space. Initial scans confirmed the presence of vast mineral wealth and the expected primitive civilization that posed no threat to their operations. Commence detailed geological surveys, he ordered his science officer, a multi-limbed Vortak collective consciousness that operated the ship's most sophisticated sensor arrays. Focus on the northern and southern polar regions first. The humans appear to have minimal presence in those areas. The science officer's harmonized voices responded with mechanical precision. Initiating deep core resonance scans. Preliminary readings confirm extraordinary concentrations of rare earth elements and quantum crystallized matter. The mining projections were conservative, Captain. This world contains resources sufficient to power our civilization for millennia. Captain Zexar nodded with satisfaction, his crystalline features reflecting the soft glow of the command center's displays. The mission was proceeding exactly as planned. The humans remained unaware of their presence, and the initial surveys suggested even greater wealth than anticipated. He prepared to transmit a success report back to the consortium when his communications officer suddenly tensed with alarm. Captain, I'm detecting massive signal traffic throughout the local system, the officer reported, his reptilian features flushed with concern. The humans appear to be conducting extensive electromagnetic communications, far beyond their normal baseline activity. The bridge fell silent as this information was processed. Extended surveillance had indicated that human communication technology was primitive and limited, yet the sensor readings suggested a communication network of surprising complexity and reach. Show me, Captain Zexar commanded, and the main viewscreen filled with a visualization of electromagnetic traffic flowing between Earth and various human installations throughout the solar system. The volume and sophistication of the communications were troubling, suggesting capabilities that hadn't appeared in any of the pre-mission intelligence reports. The signals are highly encrypted, the communications officer continued, his voice tight with worry. But, the sheer volume indicates coordinated activity on a global scale.
Captain, it's possible they've detected our presence.
The implications of this possibility sent waves of concern throughout the bridge crew. First contact scenarios were notoriously unpredictable, especially with species that had histories of violence and territorial behavior. If the humans had detected their approach and interpreted it as hostile, the mission could become significantly more complicated.
Maintain full stealth protocols, Captain Zexhar ordered.
Continue the geological surveys but keep our distance from their major population centers.
We'll complete the resource assessment before making any decisions about contact.
What Captain Zexhar didn't realize was that humanity's increased communication activity had nothing to do with detecting his ship. The emergency conferences and urgent transmissions were entirely focused on the flood of alien signals that had suddenly appeared across Earth's radio telescopes.
The mining vessel's stealth systems were functioning perfectly, rendering it invisible to human sensors just as intended. But, invisibility to human technology didn't mean invisibility to human instincts.
In a small apartment in Tokyo, 7-year-old Akira Nakamura woke from a disturbing dream and walked to his bedroom window. The child stared up at the night sky with unusual intensity, his young face troubled by emotions he couldn't name or understand. Something was wrong with the stars, he thought, though he couldn't explain what or how he knew.
Similar scenes were playing out across the globe.
In London, an elderly woman named Margaret O'Brien felt compelled to spend the entire night in her garden, watching the heavens with growing unease. In Sao Paulo, a street musician named Carlos found himself unable to sleep, his usually cheerful demeanor replaced by an inexplicable sense of impending danger. Dr. Patricia Williams, a psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins Medical Center, began receiving calls from colleagues around the world reporting unusual patterns in their patients' behavior. Children were experiencing nightmares about beings from the sky.
Adults were reporting sudden onset anxiety and paranoia.
Emergency rooms saw a significant increase in patients complaining of mysterious physical symptoms that had no identifiable medical cause.
The most disturbing reports came from military personnel.
Soldiers and officers with no previous history of psychological issues were requesting medical evaluation for what they described as wrong feelings and invisible threats.
Training exercises were disrupted by unexplained mass anxiety attacks. Veterans with combat experience reported sensing hostile presences that surveillance equipment couldn't detect.
Dr. Williams compiled these reports into an emergency bulletin that she distributed to medical professionals worldwide.
The pattern was too consistent to be coincidental and too widespread to be explained by conventional psychology.
Something was affecting human consciousness on a global scale, triggering deep-seated survival instincts that operated below the threshold of rational thought. As the mining vessel continued its surveys, more anomalous readings began appearing on its sensors.
The planet's electromagnetic field showed subtle but consistent fluctuations that didn't correspond to any natural phenomena.
Gravitational measurements detected impossible variations in local spacetime curvature.
Most disturbing of all, the ship's psychic detection equipment registered massive spikes in what could only be described as directed consciousness emanating from the planet's surface. Captain, the Vortax science officer reported, its multiple voices harmonizing with barely controlled alarm. The resonance patterns are changing. The planet's quantum substrate is showing signs of organized activity. It's as if the entire world is awakening. Captain Zexhar studied the incoming data with growing concern.
The readings suggested that their presence was somehow triggering responses from systems that shouldn't exist on a primitive world.
Deep beneath Earth's surface, ancient networks were coming online after millennia of dormancy.
Crystalline matrices that had lain silent since before recorded history were beginning to pulse with energy that defied classification.
"Are we looking at defensive systems?" he asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. "Unknown, Captain.
The energy patterns don't match any defensive technologies in our databases.
They appear to be something else entirely." Something. The science officer paused, struggling to find appropriate words, something that shouldn't be possible. The truth was becoming increasingly clear to the experienced alien explorers.
They hadn't discovered a primitive world ripe for exploitation. They had stumbled into something far more complex and dangerous than their intelligence reports had suggested.
The humans weren't just another developing species struggling with basic technology.
They were the sleeping guardians of powers that predated galactic civilization itself. And their long slumber was coming to an end. On Earth, the first confirmed sighting of an alien vessel occurred at 1847 hours Eastern Standard Time. Dr. James Crawford, an amateur astronomer in rural Montana, was conducting routine observations of Mars when his telescope detected an anomalous object in the planet's orbital path. The object was clearly artificial, far too large and geometrically perfect to be natural debris. Crawford's excited transmission to the International Space Station triggered a cascade of emergency protocols that brought governments around the world to the highest levels of alert. Within hours, every major telescope on Earth was trained on the mysterious vessel, confirming its existence and gathering detailed information about its construction and capabilities.
The alien ship was undeniably real, undeniably artificial, and undeniably focused on Earth.
Humanity's long isolation in the cosmos had officially ended, but the universe was about to discover that waking the human race was a mistake that would echo across the stars for generations to come. The ancient compact was broken, the cosmic balance was disturbed, and the sleeping giants were beginning to stir with 10,000 years of accumulated dreams and nightmares flowing through their collective consciousness. The galaxy's age of peace was over, and the age of consequence was about to begin. The transformation began subtly, like dawn creeping across a landscape that had known only darkness for millennia. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a quantum physicist at CERN, was the first to notice the anomalies in her experimental data. The particle accelerator readings showed impossible results, subatomic interactions that violated fundamental laws of physics, energy manifestations that shouldn't exist, and quantum entanglement patterns that suggested consciousness was somehow interfering with reality at the molecular level. "This can't be right," she murmured, staring at the holographic displays that showed her latest experimental runs. The data indicated that human observers weren't just detecting quantum events, they were influencing them through sheer force of will and intention. The quantum foam that underlay all matter was responding to human consciousness as if it were a programmable medium. Similar discoveries were occurring in laboratories around the world. In Moscow, Dr. Alexei Petrov found that his test subjects could alter the decay rates of radioactive isotopes simply by focusing their attention on the samples. At Tokyo University, Professor Yamamoto documented cases of students accidentally bending spacetime during meditation exercises. The University of Cambridge reported that their gravity wave detectors were picking up signals that seemed to originate from human brain activity rather than cosmic sources. The pattern was becoming undeniable. Humanity wasn't just awakening to the presence of alien visitors, they were awakening to abilities that had been dormant for 10,000 years. The genetic memory that Elder Mordun had warned about was surfacing from the depths of human DNA, triggered by the psychic pressure of knowing they were no longer alone in the universe. President Harrison convened an emergency session of the Global Defense Council in a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The world's military and scientific leaders gathered around a holographic display showing the alien vessel, which had moved from Mars orbit to a position just beyond the Moon. The ship's intentions remained unclear, but its presence had triggered responses that defied all rational explanation. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Harrison began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the crisis they faced, "we are dealing with a situation that has no precedent in human history. Our guests appear to be conducting some kind of survey mission, but their presence has awakened capabilities within our own species that we're only beginning to understand." General Patterson, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, leaned forward intently. "Madam President, our military installations worldwide are reporting spontaneous manifestations of advanced technology. Soldiers are describing weapons that materialize from thin air, defensive systems that activate without any technological interface, and communication networks that operate through pure thought. Our people aren't just adapting to the presence of aliens, they're becoming something beyond our current understanding of human limitations." Dr. Chen, now serving as the administration's chief scientific advisor, activated a new set of displays showing global readings from the previous 72 hours. "The quantum field fluctuations are accelerating exponentially. Human consciousness appears to be integrating with the fundamental forces of reality. were detecting localized alterations in gravity, electromagnetic fields, and even the flow of time itself. It's as if our species is remembering how to manipulate the basic structure of the universe. The implications were staggering and terrifying. Humanity wasn't just discovering that they weren't alone, they were rediscovering that they were never supposed to be ordinary. The peaceful farmers and merchants that the Galactic Mining Consortium had expected to encounter were revealing themselves to be something far more ancient and powerful. Meanwhile, aboard the alien mining vessel, Captain Zexar faced the growing realization that his mission had become a catastrophic miscalculation. The ship's sensors were detecting energy signatures from Earth that exceeded anything in the consortium's databases. The quantum resonance patterns suggested technological capabilities that rivaled or surpassed the most advanced civilizations in known space. Captain, his science officer reported, its harmonized voices tight with barely controlled fear, were detecting massive energy buildups in Earth's magnetosphere. The humans appear to be unconsciously channeling power through the planet's electromagnetic field. The energy levels are approaching critical thresholds that could affect local spacetime stability. The bridge crew exchanged worried glances as they absorbed this information. They had come expecting to encounter a primitive species that would be grateful for contact with advanced galactic civilization. Instead, they had awakened something that made their own technology seem like crude tools in comparison. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the human homeworld. It's not coming through any technological source we can identify. The signal appears to be generated directly from human consciousness and transmitted through quantum entanglement fields." Captain Zexar stared at his officer in disbelief. Consciousness-based communication was theoretical even among the most advanced species in the galaxy. The fact that humans were spontaneously developing such capabilities suggested evolutionary potential that bordered on the impossible. "Put it through," he ordered, though every instinct screamed that this was a mistake. The voice that filled the bridge came from no single source but seemed to emanate from the quantum foam itself. It spoke in perfect Zephyrian, despite the fact that no human should have knowledge of their language. "Visitors from the stars," the voice said, carrying harmonics that suggested multiple consciousness speaking in unison, "you have awakened us from a sleep that we chose voluntarily. We remember now what we once were, and what we set aside for the sake of galactic peace. Your presence has broken an ancient compact, and the consequences cannot be undone." Captain Zexar found his voice with difficulty. "We come in peace, seeking only to establish beneficial relationships between our civilizations. We mean no harm to your world or your people." "Harm?" The human voice carried notes of what might have been amusement, though the undertones suggested vast and alien intelligence. "Captain Zexar of the Zephyrian Mining Consortium, you misunderstand the nature of the harm that has been done. You have not harmed us. You have freed us from the bonds of self-imposed limitation. The galaxy will bear the consequences of this freedom." The communication ended abruptly, leaving the alien bridge crew in stunned silence. The implications of what they had heard were beyond their ability to process. Somehow, the humans had not only detected their presence and identified their species and purpose, but had also demonstrated abilities that challenged the very foundations of galactic civilization. On Earth, the transformation was accelerating beyond all prediction or control. In New York City, construction worker Miguel Santos discovered he could reshape steel beams with his bare hands, his touch somehow convincing the metal to flow like liquid while retaining its structural integrity. In rural India, farmer Priya Sharma found that her fields were responding to her emotional state, crops growing with impossible speed when she felt joy and withering when she experienced sadness. The changes weren't limited to individual humans. Collective consciousness was emerging in population centers around the world. The residents of Tokyo reported shared dreams and synchronized thoughts. London experienced mass telepathic events where millions of minds briefly connected into a single awareness. Sao Paulo witnessed the spontaneous manifestation of architectural structures that appeared overnight, built from materials that didn't exist in any periodic table. Dr. Williams, the psychiatrist who had first documented the psychological changes, found herself at the center of a global transformation that redefined the nature of human existence. Her patients were no longer reporting anxiety about invisible threats, they were describing the awakening of memories that stretched back through genetic time to an era when humanity wielded powers that shaped the cosmos itself. "It's like we're remembering a dream," one patient explained during a session that was being broadcast live to scientific institutions around the world. "Not our dreams, but the dreams of our ancestors from so long ago that history forgot their names. They were titans, Dr. Williams. They carved reality like sculptors working with clay, and they loved so fiercely and fought so completely that the universe itself learned to fear them." The patient's eyes, once ordinary brown, now flickered with lights that existed in spectrums beyond human vision. "We chose to sleep because we were becoming something that would have consumed everything we touched. Better to be human and limited than to be gods without restraint. But sleep was always temporary. We were always meant to wake up eventually." Elder Mordun, observing the unfolding crisis from his position aboard a monitoring station at the edge of the solar system, transmitted a final warning to the Galactic Mining Consortium. His message was simple and absolute: withdraw immediately. Do not attempt further contact. Do not return to this system. The humans are remembering what they are, and the galaxy has perhaps days before they remember what they were. The response from consortium headquarters was predictably bureaucratic. Committee Chairman Veltar dismissed the warnings as the paranoid fantasies of an ancient species that had lost touch with modern realities. The mining operation would continue as planned. Additional security forces would be deployed if necessary to ensure the successful completion of their resource extraction mission. This decision, made in the comfortable boardrooms of Nexus Prime Station, would prove to be the final mistake in a chain of errors that began with the arrogant assumption that humans were just another primitive species waiting to be enlightened by galactic civilization. The security forces arrived in Earth's solar system 72 hours later. 3 battle cruisers and a full division of Dominion Defense Force troops, armed with weapons that could shatter planets and shields that could withstand the heat death of stars. They came prepared for any conceivable resistance from a species that had barely achieved interplanetary travel. They were not prepared for what they found. Earth's moon had been transformed into something that defied classification. The ancient seas of Tycho and Tranquility now pulsed with geometric patterns of light that extended through dimensions beyond normal space. The lunar surface had become a focusing array for energies that connected the quantum substrates of reality itself. Human consciousness, no longer limited to individual minds, had begun integrating with the fundamental forces of the universe. "By the void," whispered Admiral Korth as his flagship's sensors tried and failed to analyze what they were detecting. "What have they become?" The answer came not through communication channels but through direct transmission into the consciousness of every being aboard the alien vessels. The voice was unmistakably human, but it carried harmonics that suggested awareness spanning galactic distances and temporal scales measured in geological epochs. "You came seeking to mine our world," the voice said, and reality itself seemed to bend around the words. "But you have awakened the miners of reality itself. We shaped the quantum foam before your species learned to harness fire. We carved tunnels through spacetime when your ancestors were still crawling in primordial oceans. You thought us primitive, but primitiveness and restraint are not the same thing." The human voice paused, and, in that silence, the alien crews felt the weight of 10,000 years of deliberately suppressed power beginning to unfold like a flower of pure possibility. "We chose peace over dominance, sleep over wakefulness, limitation over godhood. But choice, once made, can always be unmade. You have reminded us of what we set aside. The compact is broken. The galaxy will learn once again why the universe had one rule above all others: never wake the humans." As the transmission ended, the alien battle fleet found themselves surrounded by impossibilities. Human figures appeared in the vacuum of space, walking between starships without protection, their touch causing advanced alien technologies to evolve into configurations that transcended known physics. Earth's gravity well began extending outward, not crushing the alien vessels but embracing them with forces that redefined their relationship to space and time. The transformation was complete. Humanity had awakened not just to their cosmic heritage, but to their true nature as architects of reality itself. The sleeping giants had opened their eyes, and the universe would never be the same. The age of human limitation was over.
The age of human ascension had begun.
And, across the galaxy, ancient monitoring stations that had been silent for 10 millennia began broadcasting a simple message to every civilized world: the compact is broken.
The humans wake.
All previous assumptions are void. May whatever gods you worship have mercy on us all.